strange happened. It was the 22nd of November, 1987. WGN-TV, a local television station, was broadcasting the 9 o'clock news. Sportscaster Dan Roan was telling viewers about the day's American football results. Suddenly, the screen went black. For a terrifying, confusing 15 seconds, regular programming vanished. The glitching icon Max Headroom and the first warning. Max Headroom was not real. He was a character, a fiction. He burst onto television screens in the mid-1980s. He claimed to be computer-generated. This was part of his charm, his gimmick. With slicked-back hair, a shiny suit, and a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses, he looked futuristic. His speech was jerky, his voice electronically stuttered. He was witty, sometimes nonsensical. Max interviewed celebrities on his own chat show. He sold Coca-Cola. He became a pop culture icon, a symbol of the bright, sometimes unsettling digital future ahead. This digital man, Max Headroom, was everywhere. He started life in a British cyberpunk television film in 1985. It was called Max Headroom 20 Minutes into the Future. He was supposedly an AI, a digital copy of a journalist. This backstory added to his mystique. People were fascinated by him. Was he truly computer-generated or just clever makeup and effects? The lines blurred. This blurring was intentional. It made him compelling. He represented a new kind of media star, one born from technology, one that felt both ahead of its time and perfectly of its moment. Then, on a chilly Chicago evening, something strange happened. It was the 22nd of November, 1987. WGN-TV, a local television station, was broadcasting the 9 o'clock news. Sportscaster Dan Roan was telling viewers about the day's American football results. Suddenly, the screen went black. For a terrifying, confusing 15 seconds, regular programming vanished. In its place, an unsettling sight appeared. It was someone disguised as Max Headroom. This figure wore a cheap-looking Max Headroom mask. The background was a sheet of corrugated metal swaying oddly. There was no clear audio with this first interruption, just a strange, oscillating, buzzing sound. The figure in the mask didn't speak. It just moved erratically, rocking back and forth. The image was distorted, a pirate signal breaking through. Then, just as quickly as it started, it was over. WGN engineers managed to switch to another transmitter. Dan Roan reappeared on screen, visibly bewildered. He commented, "Well, if you're wondering what's happened, so am I." The first act of the Max Headroom Signal Hijacking was complete, a warning shot, perhaps, for what was yet to come that night. Primetime anarchy, the Doctor Who interruption. The night was not over for Chicago's television viewers, or for the mysterious signal hijacker. About 2 hours later, the pirate Max struck again. This time, the target was WTTW, a public broadcasting station. It was around 11:15 p.m. WTTW was airing an episode of the popular science fiction show. The episode was Horror of Fang Rock. Viewers settled in for adventure. Instead, they got something far stranger. The Doctor was abruptly replaced. The man in the Max Headroom mask was back. This time, he had a lot more to say and do. The second intrusion was longer, clearer, and far more bizarre. The pirate Max, his voice distorted and manic, began his strange monologue. "That does it," he declared. "He's a __CC Keek," he seemed to say, referencing WGN commentator Chuck Swirsky. "Yeah, I think I'm better than Chuck Swirsky. Frickin' liberal." The figure on screen seemed energized, more confident than in the brief WGN appearance. He held up a can of Pepsi, then threw it off screen, referencing Max Headroom's Coca-Cola advertisements with a shout of "Catch the wave." His words were a jumble of pop culture references and seemingly random thoughts. The pirate transmission continued its chaotic performance. The masked figure hummed the theme to the cartoon. He giggled. He made strange noises. He mentioned that he just made a giant masterpiece for all the greatest world newspaper nerds, a possible reference to WGN's ownership by the Tribune Company. His laughter was unsettling, echoing through the hijacked airwaves. He claimed his brother was wearing the other glove, likely referring to Michael Jackson. The entire broadcast felt like a stream of consciousness from a very peculiar mind. It was performance art, perhaps, or just pure technological mischief. Then came the most infamous part of the broadcast. The masked figure bent over. His trousers were pulled down. An accomplice, partially off-screen, spanked his bare bottom with a fly swatter. The figure screamed. This bizarre, somewhat juvenile act lasted only a few seconds, but it became the defining image of the Max Headroom hijacking. The entire interruption on WTTW lasted for about 90 seconds. Engineers at WTTW were helpless. They could not stop the illegal signal. It was too powerful. It was too well executed. The pirate signed off, leaving viewers and station staff utterly stunned. Ghosts in the machine, technical skill, and a fruitless hunt. The audacity of the Max Headroom hijacking was matched only by its technical skill. To interrupt a broadcast signal in this way was not simple. It required significant know-how. The hijackers needed to overpower the television station's own signals. This meant they had to transmit a stronger microwave signal. They aimed this signal directly at the broadcast tower's receivers. The WGN tower was atop the Hancock Center. The WTTW antenna was on Sears Tower, now Willis Tower. The hijackers needed a clear line of sight to these targets. This suggested they were operating from a tall building or a high point. The equipment used was likely powerful and probably quite specialized. It wasn't something an average person would own or know how to operate effectively. The hijackers also needed to know the correct frequencies. They had to understand how television signals were relayed from studio to transmitter. This pointed to someone with inside knowledge, perhaps a disgruntled former employee of a station, or a very dedicated, technically proficient hobbyist. The ability to execute 2 such hijacks in one night showed planning. It showed a degree of sophistication that worried authorities. This was not a casual prank. It was a calculated act of signal piracy. The Federal Communications Commission, FCC, launched an investigation immediately. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, also became involved. This was a serious federal crime. Interrupting a licensed broadcast is illegal. It can also be dangerous. Imagine if false emergency information had been broadcast. The investigators interviewed station staff. They analyzed recordings of the pirate signals. They tried to trace the source of the transmissions. They looked for clues in the bizarre content of the messages. Was there a hidden meaning? A clue to the culprits' identities? The search was on. But the hijackers had vanished into the Chicago night. Despite their efforts, the investigation yielded very few leads. The pirates were clever. They left no obvious trail. The nature of microwave transmission meant the signal was directional. It was hard to pinpoint its exact origin without being prepared. The briefness of the WGN interruption and the slightly longer WTTW event gave investigators little time. No one ever claimed responsibility for the Max Headroom hijacking. No group, no individual ever stepped forward. Suspects were theorized, of course. Some internet forums buzzed with names, but no credible evidence ever surfaced to charge anyone. The case grew cold. Whispers in the static motives, myths, and an enduring mystery. What drove someone to carry out such a strange act? The motives behind the Max Headroom hijacking remain a subject of intense speculation. Was it simply an elaborate, anarchic prank? A desire to cause chaos and confusion on a grand scale? This seems plausible. The juvenile humor, particularly the spanking scene, points to a certain kind of prankster mentality. Or perhaps it was a statement, a piece of anti-establishment performance art. Max Headroom himself was a corporate shill, a product. The pirate, Max, was his distorted, rebellious reflection, a commentary on media and consumerism. Many theories have circulated over the decades since 1987. Some believe it was the work of disgruntled broadcast engineers, people with the skills and the access, perhaps with a grievance against their employers. Others wondered if it was a demonstration, a way for hackers or tech enthusiasts to show off their capabilities. The subculture of freaking, exploring and exploiting telephone networks was active at the time. This signal intrusion could have been an extension of that spirit. The specific references made by the pirate Max have been endlessly dissected. Was clutch cargo a clue? What about the Pepsi can? Each detail has been scrutinized for meaning. The Max Headroom incident has left a lasting legacy. It's often cited as the most notorious example of broadcast signal intrusion. It was a moment when the usually controlled, one-way flow of television was dramatically ruptured. Someone talked back to the screen. In a pre-internet age, this was a shocking display of media sabotage. For many, it was their first exposure to the idea of hacking, not just computers, but the very airwaves. The event quickly became legendary. A story passed around, growing with each telling, a true ghost in the machine story for the electronic age. Today, more than 3 decades later, the mystery endures. The Max Headroom hijacking of 1987 still fascinates. It has been referenced in television shows, music and art. It serves as a curious footnote in the history of broadcasting, and a reminder of a time when technology felt both exciting and a little bit wild. The identity of the pirate Max and his fly-swatter-wielding accomplice remains unknown. They are phantoms of the analog age. Their bizarre, fleeting performance on Chicago television cemented their place in urban legend. A glitch in the system that no one could ever fully explain or forget.